My name is Ann Carter, and I was 28 years old when the cracks in my world began to show. If you'd asked me then, I would have sworn my life with Daniel was solid, dependable. Maybe not the kind of whirlwind romance you'd see splashed across Instagram, but something stronger, something built to last. 3 years together had given me enough certainty to imagine forever. Daniel and I lived in a small apartment on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy. The kind of place where the walls were painted off white and the balcony had a rusted railing. But we made it ours. On Friday nights, we'd curl up on the couch with takeout and watch old movies laughing at lines we'd memorized 100 times. I thought those little rituals meant something, that they were the fabric of love. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Daniel began to shift. It wasn't sudden. It was a creeping dread that settled into my stomach and refused to leave. One night he stared at our living room and muttered, "This place feels suffocating too, suburban, too plain." Another evening I caught him scrolling through his phone, smirking at the glossy lives of other couples. "Look at Matt and Hannah," he said, holding the screen toward me. "Always on some rooftop bar. They're living." His voice carried something sharp. Disdain, maybe, as if we weren't. I brushed it off. People go through phases, I told myself. He was just restless. But the comments didn't stop. He compared me to women I'd never met. Coworkers, friends of friends, strangers with filters and curated vacations. "Why don't you try dressing up more?" He'd ask casually, almost kindly. "Lena from the office always looks so put together." I laughed it off, pretended it didn't sting, but each word cut deeper than he realized. And here's the part that still gnaws at me, I gave. When his father was in the hospital for weeks, I drove Daniel there every single day, no matter how exhausted I was after work. When he quit his stable job to chase a new career, I worked overtime to cover most of our bills. I even surprised him with a trip to his favorite coastal town, scraping together the money just to see him smile. That was me giving supporting steady his anchor. But somewhere along the way, Daniel stopped seeing my love as devotion and started treating it like a flaw. My presence became too predictable. My loyalty became boring. The real turning point, though, came not with his words, but with silence. The kind of silence that fills a room when you know someone's attention has already drifted elsewhere. I noticed it on the nights he stayed late at work, coming home with excuses that tasted too rehearsed. I noticed it in the way he laughed at messages on his phone, tucking it away the second I entered the room. I noticed it most in the way his eyes began to search for something or someone outside of me. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was paranoid that Daniel would never, but in my bones I knew. One evening he left his phone on the bed while stepping out to grab a glass of water. A simple moment, one I wouldn't have thought twice about before, but the screen lit up, casting a glow across the sheets, and a notification appeared. "Lena can't wait to get away this weekend. Are we still on for the cabin?" The words hit me like a physical blow. My chest tightened, and the room seemed to tilt. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone, torn between the desperate need to know and the guilt of crossing a line. I scrolled. There it was. Undeniable messages stacked one after another, flirtatious jokes, late-night confessions about his boring life, and plans for a weekend getaway. He hadn't just found someone new, he was building a secret life with her. My breath came in shallow bursts. A hot rush of betrayal surged through me, yet my body felt cold. That was the moment I realized the man I thought I knew had already left me. When Daniel walked back in water glass in hand, I couldn't form words. All I could do was hold out his phone. My fingers shook, my lips pressed tight against the storm brewing inside me. The look on his face, it wasn't panic, it wasn't guilt, it was irritation. He snatched the phone from me, his jaw tight. "What the hell, Annie? Snooping through my phone. That's a complete invasion of privacy." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my voice cracked into a whisper. "The cabin." "Who is she, Daniel?" He sighed, rolling his eyes with a casual cruelty that sliced me open. He sat on the edge of the bed, not with shame, but with condescension. "Okay, so you saw it. What do you want me to say? Lena's interesting. She makes me feel alive. She's exciting." My throat closed. "You're planning a trip with her. We've been together 3 years." His voice sharpened. His voice sharpened. "And you think that's enough? Any just too easy, too safe. You're the kind of woman a man settles for when he's ready to give up on life. I'm not ready to settle. Those words, they weren't just rejection, they were eraser. As if everything I'd poured into him, the sacrifices, the love, the endless support had been reduced to nothing more than background noise in his pursuit of excitement. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't let them fall. I didn't give him that. Instead, something inside me shifted. A strange, eerie calm washed over me. The anger, the desperation, the disbelief, all of it dissolved into clarity. I saw him for what he truly was. Not the man I thought I'd build a life with, but someone cruel, restless, and incapable of valuing what he already had. So I nodded once, just once, and I started packing. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't demand apologies he was never going to mean. I folded a week's worth of clothes into a bag, tucked my laptop under my arm, and slipped the shoebox of old Polaroids, the only piece of us I wasn't ready to abandon, into the side pocket. Daniel sat there muttering under his breath, pretending my silence was more childish than his betrayal. I walked past him, without a word, past the living room, where we'd shared countless nights, past the front door that had once felt like the threshold to a home. The door clicked shut behind me. That sound was the only closure I received, and maybe the only closure I needed. The days after I walked out blurred together like watercolor left in the rain. I stayed at my friend Chloe's apartment, a cramped two-bedroom shared with her fiancé. Chloe didn't ask many questions, and for that I was grateful. Sometimes she'd just sit with me in silence, setting a cup of tea on the table without a word. Other times she'd let me rant until my voice cracked. She knew better than to pry for details I wasn't ready to spill, but the truth followed me everywhere, even in silence. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words on Daniel's phone. Every time I heard a buzz, I expected another message meant for her, not me. Betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the sound of a heart being hollowed out from the inside. Daniel's first text arrived within hours of me leaving. Daniel, look. I know you're upset. Can we just talk about this like adults? Like adults. As if I were a child throwing a tantrum. I didn't respond. The next day, another message. Daniel, where are you? Your stuff is still here. We should sort this out. I muted his number. My silence was the sharpest blade I had. Still, the quiet of Chloe's apartment pressed in on me. I wasn't angry in the way people expect. No screaming into pillows, no throwing things against the wall, just a numbness that terrified me more than rage ever could. I started running again for the first time in years, lacing up my sneakers, pounding the pavement until my lungs burned, until the rhythm of my heartbeat drowned out his voice in my head. It was the only time I felt even remotely free. But healing is never linear. One evening, Chloe came home from work, dropping her bag with a sigh. She hovered by the doorway, hesitant. I ran into someone today, she said carefully. I looked up from my tea. Hupika, Lena. The name landed between us like a stone. Chloe sat across from me, her expression equal parts pity and warning. She was with some co-workers. She didn't see me, but I overheard enough. I braced myself. Apparently she and Daniel have been inseparable. Dinners, trips, parties, the whole picture-perfect thing. At least that's what she tells everyone. My stomach twisted, but Chloe wasn't done. But then I heard her complaining about him, how he disappears for days without a word, how he mocks her for being clingy, how he makes her feel desperate. The irony cut deep. Daniel had once told me I was too desperate to be loved. Now he was telling her the same. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. Instead, I whispered, of course. Chloe reached for my hand. Anne, you know this isn't about you, right? This is who he is. It's not your fault. I nodded, though my chest still ached. Logic and emotion never march in step. Later that night, lying awake on Chloe's couch, I stared at the ceiling and thought about Daniel's words. You're too easy, too safe, the kind of woman a man settles for. For the first time, I let myself consider something dangerous. Maybe being safe wasn't a weakness. Maybe it was my strength. Maybe Daniel was chasing chaos because he couldn't stand the mirror of stability I held up to him. That thought didn't erase the pain, but it lit the first fragile spark of clarity. 2 weeks later, Daniel escalated. Blocked from my phone, he started calling from numbers I didn't recognize. At first, I ignored them, but curiosity got the better of me once. I answered. His voice was low, almost sulking. Anne, come on. Don't be like this. You know we're good together. I needed something different. That doesn't mean I don't love you. The audacity left me stunned. He wanted me waiting in the wings, a safety net in case Lena disappointed him. I forced my voice to stay calm. Daniel, you don't get to cheat, humiliate me, and then call it love. Don't ever contact me again. I hung up before he could reply. My hand trembled, but for once, it wasn't from weakness. It was from strength. But Daniel wasn't finished. A week later, Chloe found me in the kitchen, pale as paper. And you should know, Daniel's been asking around about you. He even showed up at Mark's bar last night, drunk, and saying he made a mistake. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Of course he had. Daniel wasn't mourning me. He was mourning control, and deep down I knew this was just the beginning. Because men like Daniel don't let go easily. The silence was both my enemy and my salvation. In the first weeks after leaving Daniel, I learned just how deafening quiet could be. It followed me into the shower, into bed, even on the streets when I ran until sweat blurred my vision. Silence had weight. It pressed on my chest, made every breath feel like an effort. But there was also something sacred about it. It was mine. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't bending my life around Daniel's moods, his restlessness, his contempt disguised as charm. My silence meant he couldn't reach me, couldn't twist my love into something pitiful. I leaned into it. I deleted social media at first, just to avoid seeing his face. But soon I realized how much space it freed in my head. No endless comparisons to other women. No curated snapshots of perfect couples that Daniel had used like weapons against me. A week later, I reactivated my accounts. But this time I unfollowed every mutual friend. A clean sweep. I didn't want to see a trace of him. I also kept running. It started as an escape, but soon it became a ritual. Every morning before sunrise, I'd lace up my shoes and pound the pavement. With each mile, I shed another layer of who I'd been with him. My lungs burned. My legs ached, but my mind cleared. For 30, 40, 50 minutes, I was weightless. Chloe noticed the change. You're getting faster, she said one morning when I came back flushed, so dripping sweat and stronger. Her words startled me. Stronger, it had been so long since I'd felt that way. But healing wasn't a straight line. Daniel kept trying to claw his way back into my life. Even blocked, he found ways, new numbers, mutual friends, his mother. His persistence would have been laughable if it weren't so invasive. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A pause, then his voice. Anne, it's me. Please just hear me out. I stayed silent, the phone cold against my ear. I messed up, okay? But you don't just throw away 3 years over one mistake. We were good together. You know we were. The fury I thought was gone flared. One mistake. My voice trembled, but not from weakness. You built a whole other life behind my back, Daniel, and you want me to pretend it was just a slip? His tone shifted colder now. You're being dramatic. Lena means nothing. She was just an option. I always knew you were the safe choice. Safe choice. The words snapped something inside me. I'm not an option. I said, my voice low and steady. And I'm not your safety net. I hung up before he could reply. My hands shook, but for the first time I felt steady inside. That night I lay awake on Chloe's couch, staring at the ceiling fan. Daniel's words kept echoing. The safe choice. Once I would have believed him. I would have let those words coil around me, convincing me that stability was weakness, that loyalty was pathetic. But now a new thought took root. Maybe being safe, being steady wasn't the flaw he made it out to be. Maybe it was his blindness, his hunger for chaos that made him incapable of appreciating it. And if that was true, then his betrayal wasn't proof of my inadequacy. It was proof of his. A month slipped by. My numbness softened into resolve. I went to work, came home, carved new routines for myself. I started journaling again, scribbling fragments of thoughts and memories, until my hand cramped. Slowly, the pieces of me I'd abandoned began returning. That's when the whispers started reaching me. Chloe came home one night with a cautious look. You're not going to like this, she warned. I braced myself. Daniel and Lena. It's not the fairy tale he made it out to be. She's been venting to people at work. Apparently he vanishes for days, won't answer her calls. When he does show up, he mocks her for being needy. She said he even told her she was desperate for love. I froze. Those exact words. The same dagger he'd used on me now plunged into someone else. Chloe's eyes searched mine. I only told you because I thought maybe it would help you see. He hasn't changed. He won't. I nodded slowly, a dry laugh escaping my throat. No, he hasn't changed. He just found someone else to break. A dark irony settled over me. Daniel had traded loyalty for chaos, and now he was drowning in the very storm he'd craved. For the first time, I didn't feel sadness or anger. I felt distance, like watching a play where you already know the ending. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of his unraveling. It happened slowly, almost imperceptibly, like a glass of water tipping in slow motion before shattering across the floor. Daniel's world, the glamorous, exciting one he traded me for, began to crack. At first, I only heard whispers. Chloe mentioned seeing one of Lena's friends at a bar. According to her, Lena was still posting endless pictures of rooftop dates, trips to wine country, and designer gifts. But behind the curated photos, the truth was unraveling. Daniel wasn't the free-spirited, adventurous man he sold himself as. He was erratic. Cold one day, overly affectionate the next. He would vanish for entire weekends without warning, then reappear as though nothing had happened. When Lena demanded answers, he'd smirk and tell her she was paranoid, too needy, too desperate. I didn't need to imagine her face when he said those words. I already knew the sting of them. Irony has a cruel way of circling back. The same barbs that once gutted me were now tearing into her. My phone began buzzing again, this time with desperation that bled through even blocked numbers. Unknown calls, voicemails that started lighthearted. Anne, come on, don't ignore me. This is childish, but soon turned darker. One message was just him breathing ragged and uneven. Another was his voice low and breaking. Please, I don't know what I'm doing. I need you. I listened once, then deleted it because what he needed wasn't me. What he needed was someone to clean up the wreckage of his choices, and that was never going to be me again. Then came the third-party messengers. A text lit up my screen one morning. Chloe, not my. Chloe, his Chloe. Hey, Anne. This is Chloe. I know we don't really know each other, but Daniel's not doing well. He said he misses you, that he made a mistake. I think he really needs you right now. I stared at the message until the words blurred. He hadn't changed. He was using his friends now the same way he once used my loyalty. I typed back carefully. Chloe, I appreciate you reaching out, but Daniel and I are done. I wish him the best, but I'm not the person who can help him. Polite, firm, final. And then I blocked her number too. The escalation didn't stop. A week later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Anne, honey, it's Mrs. Collins, Daniel's mother. Her voice was soft, trembling. My throat went dry. Oh, hello. I'm so sorry to call you like this. Daniel's been so low. He says he ruined everything. He told me you're the only one who ever really understood him. I gripped the phone tighter, anger and pity wearing inside me. Mrs. Collins, I truly wish him well, but I can't be that person for him anymore. But Anne, she pressed gently, almost pleading. You made him happy. He was better with you. Please, can't you just talk to him? My voice hardened, even as guilt prickled my chest. I'm sorry. That chapter of my life is over. I hung up before she could reply, my heart pounding. It wasn't lost on me. The cruel audacity of it all. His mother begging me to save him, as though I hadn't already tried, as though 3 years of giving and breaking myself had been erased. But the final desperate attempt wasn't through a text or a call or his mother's voice. It was Daniel himself. He showed up at Chloe's building one Saturday afternoon. I only knew because I heard the knock sharp and insistent. And when I opened the door there, he was disheveled, hollow-eyed. His once neatly styled hair was a mess, his clothes wrinkled and hanging loose. He looked smaller somehow, as though his chaos had devoured him from the inside. Anne, he breathed, his voice cracking. Please just talk to me. I was wrong. I miss you. I miss us. Tears clung to his lashes, but they didn't move me the way they once would have, because for the first time I wasn't seeing him through the lens of what he could be. I was seeing him exactly as he was, and he wasn't mine anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply looked him in the eye and said, "Go home, Daniel." Then I closed the door in his face. My hands shook as the latch clicked into place, but inside I felt something I hadn't in months. Peace. It struck me then. Karma isn't lightning. It doesn't strike fast and furious. It's a slow unraveling thread by thread until everything someone clung to slips through their fingers. Daniel had traded loyalty for chaos, and chaos had swallowed him whole, and all I had to do was step aside and let it. 6 months had passed since I last saw Daniel on Chloe's doorstep. By then, my life had reshaped itself in quiet, steady ways. I had moved into my own apartment, small, sunlit, with a balcony just big enough for 2 chairs and a potted fern. I couldn't keep alive, but it was mine. I'd gotten a promotion at work, started hosting Sunday dinners with friends, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waking up with a knot of dread in my stomach. I was okay, maybe even happy. So when Chloe's cousin invited me to her wedding, I didn't hesitate. I bought a new dress, deep emerald, the kind of color Daniel once told me I couldn't pull off, and let Chloe do my hair. For the first time in a long time, I liked what I saw in the mirror. The ceremony was beautiful, held under sprawling oak trees, with fairy lights strung like constellations. Love was everywhere in the vows, in the way the groom's hands shook, in the tears that slipped down Chloe's cheeks beside me. I thought I was safe there, untouchable, until I saw him. Daniel stood at the back of the reception hall, half-shadowed, holding a drink like it was a lifeline. For a moment I almost didn't recognize him. He looked diminished. His once proud posture was hunched, his suit ill-fitting, his eyes bloodshot. Even from across the room I could see the edges of who he used to be had frayed into something brittle and tired. When his gaze landed on me, his face crumpled. Not into a smirk, not into the irritation I had grown used to, but into something raw, desperate. He pushed through the crowd until he was standing in front of me. "Anne," he said softly, his voice breaking, "you look incredible." I stayed silent, my expression neutral. His throat bobbed. "I need to say I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything about you, Lena. She was a mistake. His voice cracked, his eyes glassy. She tore me apart. I've been so lost. I miss you. I miss us." Once those words would have undone me. I would have reached for him, clung to the familiar, let myself be swept back into the storm. But not this time. I tilted my head, studying him. Calmly I asked, "Do you remember what you told me? That I was too easy, too safe, that I was the kind of woman a man settles for when he gives up on his dreams?" His face twisted with shame. "I didn't mean yes, you did." My voice was steady, even gentle. "And maybe you were right. Maybe I am safe. Maybe I am steady. But that's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be valued. And you couldn't see that." He swallowed hard, searching my face for a trace of the old me. "I see it now. Please, Anne. I need you." I shook my head. "No, you don't need me. You need someone to rescue you from the mess you created, and that's not who I am anymore." His eyes brimmed with tears. "I love you," he whispered. I took a breath, letting his words hang between us before I answered. "You don't love me, Daniel. You love what I gave you. Safety, loyalty, a home. You miss the person who shielded you from yourself, but you don't miss me. Not really." The silence that followed was heavy, but it didn't suffocate me this time. It freed me. I set my glass down on the bar, turned, and walked away. I didn't look back. Later that night, as I stood beneath the canopy of oak trees, music and laughter spilling around me, I realized something profound. Daniel wasn't the end of my story. He was just a chapter, painful, yes, but necessary. He had mistaken my loyalty for desperation, my steadiness for weakness. And in doing so, he'd set me free. Free to choose a different ending. Free to be more than the woman who loved him. Free to finally love myself. And as the night carried on, I smiled. For once, not because I was someone's anchor, but because I was my